Hey everybody, it's Marson here from Northwest Arkansas Land Trust. I hope you're staying sane and I hope you're staying healthy. Also hope you had a chance to get outside a little bit during all this. Um, Welcome to part 2 of our Birding 101 series. We were supposed to have this class at Wilson Springs a few weeks ago, but we got quarantined out. So what I wanted to talk to you guys about today was, you know, identifying birds in the field, and in particular being able to use a field guide well. Field guides, I have a love and hate relationship with them. I love the fact that I can get all of my information right at my fingertips when I need it. Most field guides are pretty small, so you can carry them in a backpack. Some are a little larger and they're more of a desk reference. But I can also tend to get frustrated with them in the field a little bit, especially using field guides I'm not accustomed to, not knowing how it's all laid out, not knowing how to get to certain species or orders of birds. Um, as fast as I want to. So today I just wanted to give you some tips and some tricks on how to use that field guide and how to better identify birds in the field and when you get back to the house. So we moved downstairs to my workbench in my garage. In addition to being bird season, it's also lawnmower season and Disney season and Zoom meeting season. So, everybody's got to have their place in the house, right? So this is mine. So this is my field guide, and this is my 4th copy of this one right here. I wear them out and have worn them out pretty quickly when I was really doing hardcore birding. I also used them for my job, so they stayed in the work truck and got pretty nasty. So this is number 3 or 4 for me. I can't even remember which. But anyways, the field guide I've come to rely on the most is the one produced by Roger Torrey Peterson. This is the Peterson Field Guides to Birds. Peterson is regarded by many as the godfather of birding and the godfather of the modern field guide as we know it, pretty much. He was an artist and a naturalist, and these field guides are laid out pretty well for most people. There are some more in-depth ones out there. Sibley's is one that covers a little more features, wings and flight, that kind of stuff. But for general purposes, the Peterson guide is it's the best one I've come across. So at the beginning of most of these field guides, you get a little anatomy lesson, and we'll flip through here. And I wanted to put this book out on a bench for you guys because I want you guys to see some pictures in here. It's easier for me to understand what things are happening when I've got an image or a graphic. So, when it comes to identifying a bird in the field, really the first thing I always look at is habitat. Where am I? What am I most likely to see? What am I not likely to see? But after that, it's all about the basic morphology of a bird. So this field guide and many others, they go through a little lesson at just the beginning of things to look for in a bird and differences in birds that will allow you to identify them in the field and then at home later if you can't do it in the field. But they go through body shape, body size, wing shape. Many birds have different wing shapes that are adapted to different environments they live in. Woodland birds will have more rounded wings. Birds like swifts and swallows that hunt on the wing for insects, they're built more like a little airplane. They're very aerobatic. Also, bill shape is another one. You may not be able to see these very well without a pair of binoculars, but they are something to look for in birds. These bills and beaks adapted for the type of prey or food that the birds eat. So each group of them will have a little bit different shape, and that can help you identify what they're eating and help you lead them to a family and better identification. Also, shapes of the tail are pretty common to find differences in those characteristics. The swifts and the swallows have that kind of V-shaped tail. Birds like doves will have this arrow-shaped tail. Some are rounded, some are squared. Also, the position of the tail. Things like wrens, those species of birds tend to sit perched with their tail straight up. Certain flycatcher species will have their tail straight down or will have a bob in the tail when they're perched. So looking at tail can be pretty important. Behaviors too, like tree climbing and wading and diving and that kind of stuff can also help you identify a bird in the field. Field marks, there's a bunch of different field marks for birds. Some are easier to see than others for sure. So good field marks to look for are things like tail pattern. Does it have a white bar at the end of the tail? Does it have kind of a white along these leading edges of the tail. When we get into warblers and species, sometimes you identify them by the different color of the feathers under the body where the tail meets. Rump patches, so northern harriers, and things like yellow rumped warblers will have a rump patch. Though the yellow rump warbler is actually referred to as butterbud by many people because it is such a distinctive characteristic of the bird. Stripes and eye rings, I call these eyebrows too sometimes. Many birds will have a stripe that goes through the eye or is broken around the eye. They'll have this eyebrow up here, a bar above the eye. Many birds will have an eye ring as well. They'll have white completely encircling, or it will be broken. Robins have a broken white eye ring. Wing bars too. This is important with things like sparrows. They have little brown jobs. Those guys can be extremely difficult to tell apart in the field. So a lot of times you're looking for characteristics like wing bars or like speckles on the breast, blotches on the breast. You know, the song sparrow has a big black spot basically right in the middle. So that's a way to determine it too. And then wing patterns, mainly for waterfowl. Some waterfowl are pretty hard to identify at certain times of the year, especially in the non-breeding season. And so, so for those, you're looking for wing patterns, white patches on the bottom or underside of, or on the top of the wing, and then you're looking for spots of color on the wing as well. So those are all good features to look for. Familiarizing yourself with these is really key to birding easily so that you don't have to rely on the field guide every time. But I don't anticipate, and I haven't, memorizing every single feature for every single bird. You'll find with birds that there's one key feature that makes them really stand out from others. So learning those really key features, I think that's the crucial part of being able to identify birds well in the field. So another cool feature of these field guides is they give a range map, and most of these will be broken out into colors. So with blue being winter, red being or pink being summer, and then purple if they're found there most of the year. These range maps will help you eliminate a lot of birds from your field guide. You can see right here with the tundra swan. They're found like in the wintertime on the eastern seaboard in a little patch here, and then in the summertime they're way up here around the Arctic Circle. So you're not likely to find something like that in Arkansas at any time of the year. So you can flip through these books, and what I've done sometimes I put a star where I am. And so like when I was using this in Florida, I was looking for ducks out at the Orlando's Wetlands Park. And so I just came through here and put a little star on stuff that I may be able to see there. And if it had a star, I knew that it was something I was likely to see. If it didn't have a star, something I was unlikely to see. And I actually went through a couple of these whole field guides and annotated all the maps so that when I was running down looking for a species, I could say, well, those two are supposed to be here and that one's not. So sometimes a horse is just a horse and not a zebra, so remember that too. It's really unusual to find certain birds outside of their range, and it is a cause for great excitement amongst the birding community when these are found. So usually go on the side of what is probably there rather than something that looks like it may be exotic. So just keep that in mind. Also for these field guides, I have certain species that I struggle with from time to time, and so what I do, and what I know a lot of birders do, is they'll put a little sticky note in here at those species. I tend to read these like a book, and I just sit around and pick at them and flip the random pages and learn about different species. And I encourage everybody to do that too. The more you look at these field guides, the more you'll develop that search image and memory. So when you're in the field, you won't be surprised necessarily by something that you haven't seen before. You'd be like, oh my gosh, that's a rose-breasted grosbeak or something along those lines. You'll be able to recall that. So I go through these and look at them a lot just to keep my brain fresh as far as being able to identify these guys. But certain orders of birds and certain species that look alike, they give me trouble. And so what I do is I put a sticky note on the section so that I could easily flip through them. So I've got one for ducks. Ducks are ones in particular that a lot of people have difficulty with. and I do too as well. I don't see enough of them to keep my brain up, but when it's wintertime at Wilson Springs and there's ducks there, I want to be able to, like, shoot to the page real fast and be able to identify it. So I do that for ducks. Another one is the raptors. A lot of times people struggle with raptors, and here again, you can eliminate a lot of things just by looking at the map. But raptors is another one, and they go through several different plumages a lot of times, and they look different during different stages in their life. A lot of them look very, very similar to each other. I'll show you the accipiters are ones that people have a lot of problems with. Cooper's hawk and sharp-shinned hawks. They look so similar, but little features like, the Cooper's hawk has a cap and the sharp-shinned hawk has a hood, things like that. Tail shape. Cooper's hawk is a round shape. I always remember it's shaped like a C for Cooper's, and the sharp-shinned hawk has a little more square. But other than that, when you look at them in the field guide, they're very, very similar, and in the field they're very, very similar too. So I always keep a tab on those. A lot of times too, you'll see them flying in the air, and so to have a guide to what they look like as they're flying, and Peterson's does a pretty good job of showing that, what they look like from the underside. Another cool thing that happens is you'll see kettles of vultures. You'll see a dozen or so vultures all circling around over a thermal. If you'll grab your binoculars and check those out, a lot of times you'll find hawk species flying with them. And so just the other day we saw a kettle of black vultures, and there was a red-shouldered hawk flying right there with them in the kettle. So when you see groups of vultures like that, I always tell people to go out there and look and see if they can identify a hawk in there too, because that's a pretty cool mixed flock, if you want to call it that. Another thing that gives me and a lot of people trouble are the warblers. There's a bunch of types of warblers, and most of them are some combination of yellow, brown, gray, black, and white. And there's so many of them, and I actually have this guide right here, the Warbler's Guide. This is sort of like the Bible, and this gives you some really in-depth ID keys, because a lot of times when you're seeing warblers and a lot of other woodland species, you're seeing them in the summertime, and so you can't see them through the leaves, and so you're either trying to identify them by song, or you're trying to identify them by features of under the tail or under the belly. And so having a really extensive guide like that, if you really want to get geeking out in a particular group of birds, that's pretty critical. Another one that I struggle with, and a lot of people do too, are the sparrows. We call them little brown birds or little brown jobs growing up. A lot of these look a lot alike, and you'll notice again, if you look at your maps over here, you can cross out several of these because they're just not going to be typically found here in Northwest Arkansas. But the sparrows, yeah, this is another one that, we look at wing bars, and we look at eyebrows and eye rings, things of that nature, speckles on the breast, coloration too, but they're very similar species. And so if you really want to geek out on a particular group of birds, the sparrows are really good, and the warblers are really good. So anyways, yeah, I would encourage you to sit down with the book and read up on the different species you're likely to see. Mark your maps in here. Try to eliminate a lot of birds in there that you're not likely to find out in the field here in Northwest Arkansas. And then annotate, and then mark some groups of birds using some sticky notes to help you flip to it really fast in the field. One of the things I get most frustrated about a field guide, if I don't have it marked, or if it's a field guide I'm not used to using, is that I can't find the species or the group of birds I'm looking for in here. And like the birds of Arkansas, this little book is handy because it has them grouped by color. And I know one of the Audubons, if you've got the old rainbow collection of the Audubon field guides, their bird book also groups them by color, which is pretty convenient if you just need to flip the one right quick, but it gives you a bunch of species that you may not see in the habitat you are. So that's kind of the trade-off there. But if you know it's a blue bird, you flip to the page where the blue birds are. Where's my bluebirds? There they are, they're in here. And then you know what you're looking for. Eastern bluebird, yeah, likely to see. Pine grosbeak, only in summer. These kind of things right there. So that's pretty convenient to have. the more in-depth field guides, they put them in taxonomic group. So it could be a little bit hard. You know, for me, I think raptors, so I want to include owls and things with the hawks and stuff, but they really don't do it that way in there. And that's just when you just got to learn your field guide and know it. You know, think about this as your instruction manual to birding. Learn this book, know how it works, and then you'll have less frustration in the field when you're trying to identify one out there. So another really fun way to identify birds, especially ones that are high in trees that you can't see very well, is by their song. And it can be kind of a daunting task, but if you break it up into chunks and learn maybe 10 at a time, it's way easier. Birds can often be identified by their call. There are a few that are kind of funky. Blue jays and mockingbirds in particular will mimic calls from other birds. But there's a ton of birds out there that you'll be able to identify just by their call. I remember in college I had to learn 200 species of birds by their call only, and our test labs were just a boombox with a CD in it that played songs and had a number. And so that was sort of my crash course. When I moved out to Nevada and became a field biologist, I had to know a lot of birds out there that I had never encountered in North Carolina. And so I studied that field guide, and then I got a CD collection of birds of the West. And I learned a lot of their calls too. So that's a pretty fun way to identify birds, along with these other characteristics that they have. Like I said, it can be kind of daunting to try to memorize a bunch all at once, but there's a lot of them that you'll be able to pick up pretty easily. A lot of them that you may already be familiar with. Carolina wrens typically say something like cheeseburger, cheeseburger, and tufted titmouses repeat the word Peter. Eastern towies say drink your teas. Those are pretty easy to find, but if you rely on the field guide, they're going to tell you it's got a call of a reach, cheat, cheat, ping, and that doesn't tell you anything. And so if you want to get into birding by ear, I would encourage you to get some CDs. Go to the Cornell Lab of Ornithology's website. You just type in a bird, and it'll spit out songs and different alarm calls, the whole 9 yards. So you can really get deep into it really fast if you're musically inclined or just want to learn to identify birds that way. Well, in typical Northwest Arkansas style, we've gone from blue skies to rain, but that's okay because the birds are still flying out there. Thank you so much for watching this video series. I hope you guys learned something today, how to identify some characteristics of birds in the field and how to use that field guide well. Being able to identify birds in the field and be able to use that field guide well is going to lead to a lot more fun and a lot less frustration out there when you're birding. For our third and final video, I'm going to go through my top 10 birds of Wilson Springs Preserve, and they're my top 10 favorite birds of Wilson Springs Preserve. So please stick around for that, and thanks for watching this video. Northwest Arkansas Land Trust is the region's only locally grown accredited nonprofit land conservation organization. We are dedicated to the permanent protection of land for the benefit of all our residents, our wildlife, and our water quality. Please go to nwalandtrust.org to see what we've been up to, the lands we protected, and places you can get out to explore. Thank you so much for your help and support over the years and your continued help and support. It takes a village and a community of people engaged in the process of land conservation to truly save land. Thank you.